Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Now, I don't tend to do intros unless it's like little videos like this, where I'm actually talking to you. I'm just like reading a story or something. I have done what I did with the Afton build, and I have taken the published videos as I don't have the raw file anymore, as those have also been getting popular in my recent watches, and I have put them together as best I can to form one coherent speed build, and I'm going to read the story of the Emily family over the top, or at least an interpretation of the Emily family over the top. So with that, let's get into it, and I hope you like it. Let me know. The Emily family. Shadows of the past. Once there was a man who built dreams, and Henry Emily had a dream. He believed in the magic of childhood, in the joy that could be sparked by laughter, music, and the warm glow of the stage. He wanted to build a place where joy echoed through the halls, where families gathered to celebrate birthdays, and where laughter drowned out the world's sorrows. Fredbear's family diner was more than just a business. It was his life's work, his legacy, and a promise to his children that the world could be a safe, magical place. Alongside his old friend William Afton, Henry turned that dream into a reality. Their creations, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, became the heart of the diner, drawing in crowds eager to see the lifelike animatronics perform. But behind the cheerful facade, Henry remained the true genius. Afton was a showman, an ambitious businessman, but it was Henry's mind that breathed life into their work. He was the one that understood the delicate balance between machine and magic. Henry wasn't just an inventor, he was also a husband and a father. He had a wife who supported him and a daughter who adored him. Charlotte was his light, his greatest joy, the heart of everything he built. And then she was gone. Grief changes a person. It distorts time, unravels memories, and leaves behind shadows where there was once warmth. Some claimed Henry once had a son, a child lost to the past, like so many other things. But none of it mattered. Not anymore. Not after Charlotte. He poured himself into his work. He dedicated every waking hour to his animatronics, to the business, to a future that he convinced himself would justify the sacrifices. He never imagined that the very thing he built to bring happiness would take everything away. He never thought the magic he created for children would become a prison for spirits who could never find peace. And when the truth finally came to light, when the horrors lurking beneath the surface could no longer be ignored, Henry realized that dreams could decay, that a creation meant to inspire joy could just as easily be twisted into something monstrous. He had spent years constructing a world of wonder, only to watch it collapse into something he no longer recognized. By the time he saw what had become of it all, it was already too late. Chapter 1. Charlotte's Last Night. Charlotte Emily loved the pizzeria. She loved the flashing lights that painted the walls in shifting colours, the cheerful music that never seemed to stop, and the smell of fresh pizza wafting through the air. The laughter of children filled every corner, blending with the mechanical whirs and clicks of the animatronics as they danced and sang. But most of all, she loved her father's creations. Henry Emily was a man of precision and passion, someone who poured his heart into his work. He didn't just build machines, he gave them life, in his own way. To Charlotte, they weren't just robots programmed to entertain guests. They were friends, and she trusted them. Charlotte was never alone. Henry had made sure of that. He had built something special just for her, an animatronic unlike any of the others. A protector, a guardian, the puppet. It wasn't like the rest of the animatronics, with their bright colours and exaggerated expressions. Its slender frame and blank white face were almost unsettling to others, but not to Charlotte. To her it was comforting. It never sang or played games, but it was always watching, always following her with silent vigilance. She knew it would keep her safe. She had no reason to doubt it, until the night it happened. The storm rolled in fast. The sky, once painted in fading hues of sunset, had turned a deep, suffocating black. Rain hammered against the pavement, creating rushing streams along the edges of the parking lot. Wind howled between the buildings, making the neon pizzeria sign flicker and sway. Charlotte wasn't sure how she'd ended up outside. Maybe she had wandered too far while playing. Maybe she had stepped out just for a moment, only to have the door swing shut behind her. She reached for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. She knocked on the door, but there was no answer. No one could hear her over the storm. The rain soaked through her clothes, chilling her to the bone. She took a deep breath, glancing around. Someone would come. Someone had to come. And then she saw him. It was William Afton. He was her father's friend. He'd let her inside. Everything was going to be okay. She turned, but it was too late. His hand, cold, crushing, fingers wrapped around her wrists like iron shackles. She opened her mouth to scream, but the storm swallowed the sound. The puppet wasn't coming. It had been separated from her by the door. Its programming was driving it forward, trying to find a way through the barrier between them. But that was the easy part. The rain, so much rain, shorted its circuits, made it stumble, falter. It reached for her, metal fingers twitching, stretching desperately. But it was too slow. By the time Henry realised what had happened, she was gone, and the puppet, her guardian, her friend, was left abandoned in the alleyway, grieving in the only way a machine could, and even in ways it couldn't, as it started to cry. Chapter 2. A house in mourning. Grief is a quiet thing. It does not scream or wail. It lingers, like dust settling over forgotten memories. It creeps into spaces beneath breaths, turning once familiar rooms into hollow echoes of what they used to be. The house was never silent before. Charlotte's laughter had once filled every room, a bright, innocent sound that wrapped around Henry's heart like a warm embrace. Her tiny footsteps had always pattered against the wooden floors, running to greet him when he came home from the restaurant, arms outstretched, waiting to be lifted into the air. Even on the nights he worked late, exhausted and worn down from another long shift at Fredbear's, she had waited for him, peeking around the corner with a sleepy smile. But after that night, the house was still. Too still. His wife could not bear it. She could not bear the empty chair at the dinner table, the untouched toys gathering dust in the corner of Charlotte's room. She could not bear the silence. She begged Henry to let go, to walk away from the business, to leave behind the machines that had failed them. Henry could not. He would not. But Henry was not the only father who would know loss. Afton's own son, the boy who had feared the creations they built, had become a victim of their dream before Charlotte. The crying child, as history would remember him, met his fate in the jaws of Fredbear himself, crushed in a tragic accident that should never have happened. And then there was Elizabeth, his daughter, so eager to embrace what her father had made, taken by the machine built in her image. Circus Baby had meant to delight, but instead she consumed. Another child lost to the creations they had once celebrated. The loss barely affected Afton. Henry had assumed he was putting on a brave face and busying himself with work, but the reality was twisting into something darker. Where Henry mourned and searched for meaning, William searched for a way to regain his control. Henry tried to support his friend through what should have been the worst grief ever experienced, but he could not predict what would happen next, let alone stop it. He could not stop what had happened to his own daughter. He also couldn't let go at the place where Charlotte had spent her last moments, couldn't turn away from the animatronics he had built with his own hands, the ones that were supposed to protect her. He needed to know what had happened, He needed answers. And when his wife left, Henry didn't stop her. Perhaps she had the right idea. But a name hung in the air, a whisper in the back of his mind, a memory that felt like it belonged, but never fully settled. Some said Henry had a son once, that Charlotte had a twin brother, that there had been another empty chair at the table before Charlotte's was left vacant. But if Sammy had ever truly existed, he had long since faded into uncertainty. If he had been real, Henry's wife had taken him when she disappeared, leaving only echoes of his presence behind. Some days Henry convinced himself Sammy was nothing more than a ghost of what could have been, an illusion conjured by grief and exhaustion. Other days he swore he saw a second empty chair, space where someone should have been, a shadow that lingered just out of reach. A missing piece of a story he was no longer certain he remembered correctly, but something else gnawed at him, a sickness growing in his gut, a whispering of something far worse than loss. The animatronics. They weren't right. They moved when they shouldn't, lingered too long in the dark. And the puppet, it wept. He saw it in the security footage, its black eyes streaming with silent tears. The missing children, one by one they had vanished, their names etched into newspaper ink, their faces frozen in grainy photographs. And each time, Afton had been near. Henry wanted to believe it was grief playing tricks on him, that he was seeing ghosts where there were none. But when he looked at the animatronics, when he truly looked, he saw something staring back, something trapped. Chapter 3. Henry's Revelation. The more Henry dug, the more he uncovered, and the worse it became. Henry had built this company with William, believing in the dream of something wonderful. He had envisioned a place where children could laugh and play, where families could come together and escape into a world of magic and joy. And for a time, it had been just that. He had spent years perfecting his designs, ensuring every animatronic moved just right, that the characters could delight and entertain. But while Henry had been designing machines for joy, William had been twisting them into something else, something monstrous. It started with whispers, quiet unease creeping into the edges of Henry's awareness. Disappearances, children vanishing, rumours circulating, parents growing uneasy. The first time Henry had reassured himself that it was a tragic coincidence. The second time he had begun to worry. But the third, the fourth, by then, the truth had started to take shape. And the crying child, Elizabeth, and now Charlotte. How many more children had this monster taken? His hands trembled as he reviewed the blueprints, as he saw the modifications William had made to his designs. Small adjustments, easily overlooked at first, reinforced endoskeletons, hidden locking mechanisms, parts that had no reason to exist in machines built for entertainment. He had been too focused on his own work to notice before, too trusting of his business partner to question every change. But now, with his daughter gone, his eyes were open. Henry followed the evidence, piecing together what should have never been possible. The disappearances, the rumours, the silent, staring faces of the animatronics. The truth settled like a weight in his chest, suffocating. Charlotte had not been the first, and she had not been the last. The realization shattered something in him. The machines he had helped create, the ones meant to make children smile, they weren't just machines anymore. They were graves. A sickness crawled through Henry's veins as he stared at the blueprints, at the lifeless eyes of the animatronics in his workshop. Had they always looked like that? Cold? Watching? Waiting? He had spent his life crafting dreams, and now all he could see were nightmares. It would not stop, not unless he did something. William had built his horror in the shadows, hiding behind charm and deception. But Henry had the truth now. And once the truth was known, there was no turning back. Henry Emily would never be the same again, and neither would Fazbear Entertainment. Chapter 4. A Fire for the Forgotten. There was only one thing left to do. Henry could not save his daughter. He could not bring back the children who had been taken, nor could he erase the horror that had spread from the place he once saw as a dream. But he could make sure that it ended. So he started to plan. He planned for years to make sure he set the perfect trap. He only had one shot at this. There was no room for mistakes. And when it was finally ready, he set the bait and waited. A final restaurant. A final stage. A place built not for profit, not for nostalgia, but for something much darker. It was a tomb. A carefully constructed grave meant to contain the horrors that had festered within Fazbear Entertainment for so long. He had expected a stranger to take the job, someone seeking an easy paycheck, someone he could quietly lead away when the time came. He had prepared an exit, an escape route, ensuring that whoever answered the job listing would not be caught in the inferno. But then Michael Afton arrived. Henry had not planned for him. He had not expected him to take the job. But there he stood, the son of the man who had caused so much suffering, the one who had been left to clean up the mess his father had made. The moment Henry saw him, he knew. Michael was not here for money or convenience. He was here to end this just as much as Henry was. And when the time came, when the flames began their ascent, licking at the walls and swallowing the remnants of the past, Michael did not run. He did not use the escape Henry had so carefully planned. He stood firm, watching the fire rise, watching the shadows writhe as the spirits that had been trapped for so long finally found release. Henry gripped the microphone, his voice steady as he addressed the lost souls lingering in the flames. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. The restaurant groaned around him, the fire consuming everything it touched. The old animatronics, those wretched husks housing the broken remains of stolen childhoods, collapsed under the heat, their suffering finally coming to an end. And then there was William, the monster who had started it all, the man who had taken Charlotte, who had taken so many others, who had built a legacy off of blood and fear. Henry knew he was here. He had ensured that William would be lured to this place, that he would have no escape, and this time there would be no coming back. Henry's voice turned cold. His final words meant only for one. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. As the fire raged, Henry closed his eyes. This was not victory. There was no triumph in this moment, only relief. And in the end, the flames took them all.